Hello and welcome to our webinar today. I'm Jacob Findlay along with Chris O'Brien. Hey Chris.
Good afternoon, Jacob.
Great to be here.
Absolutely.
Today our webinar is how to make your shop successful in 2022. And we've got a lot of great content to cover. It comes from our heart. We practice what we preach in this area, and we are very excited to share what we believe is just a tremendous amount of collective knowledge on how to set goals, how to run a financial plan. Quick introduction, co-founder, executive chairman of Fullbay. Chris is the chief operating officer, COO of Fullbay. And it's going to be us today.
Yes.
Quick disclaimer, the information in this presentation is just meant to be general and should not be considered legal, tax, accounting, or specific professional advice. So make sure that you consult with your professional in all those areas for your specific situation. What we're going to cover today, 3 main points. First of all, how to set realistic goals for your business, how to grow your shop this year, and then how to create a financial plan for your shop. And we talked about this last January 2021. And I think a lot of people used the financial plan that we offered to do better in 2021 than they otherwise would have.
Yeah, it was interesting because not a lot of people are talking about this. Some people are just going through the year and closing out with it's tax season. You know, get all the information to my accountant, let them wrap this up, spend some money, do some write-offs, and they're not really thinking about the goals, planning. It's just January's another month. And really, it's a new year, it's a new beginning, and it's a time to reset, but you can't achieve anything without setting a goal. Right?
Yeah, exactly. One thing that we've always done really well at is we are not closing our books for tax purposes. That's more of like an afterthought. We do pay our taxes, but the main reason we do it is to know how we did and how we did against the goals that we set. We are extremely interested in that.
Yeah, we'll even take it to a monthly, we do quarterly, and we do annual planning. So really, it's a super important part of your business if you're not already doing that today.
And so first off, how do you set realistic goals for your business? First things first, you need to review how you did. So review 2021, right?
It's kind of tough because it's like looking in the rearview mirror and you're trying to look forward. But the reality is you need to see the trends. You need to see where there's opportunities, where maybe you didn't perform as well as you thought you were going to. And it's critical to look at that data. Guesstimating, thinking it's going to be better, you really have to look at data and say, what was the seasonality? Maybe what was the last 12 weeks run rate? What was the last 8 weeks run rate? There's a lot of different factors in there because if you budget based on your last 12 weeks and you totally miss the summer where maybe you peak or maybe it's a slow time of the year for you, those are important things to consider as you're putting your plan together.
So for those of you who went ahead and set a financial plan in place for 2021, after we talked about it last January, now you have a full year of budget to actuals in place and you can see how you did versus the budget. It's really powerful. If you don't have that yet, it's okay. You can still review what your actuals were month to month. Hopefully you're closing your books every month. We have a great financial close checklist, monthly close checklist that you can download on the website that just helps you not have to keep it all memorized, what you need to do at the end of every month.
Yeah, it's super critical, especially if you're doing purchases throughout the year. If you have a down month, you definitely want to do purchases or restocking when you're on an up month, right? You don't, sometimes there's these ebbs and flows, and the last thing you want to do is have a down month and then you go out and restock your facility and then drain the cash out of the business. So this planning can also be part of purchasing, not just revenue budgeting.
Yep, for sure. So we have a great quote here from Robbie, our director of finance. The sooner you can close your books and look back and review where you ended up, the better. Because if you've been doing something that's making you fall behind in some way, you want to know that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree.
So the sooner you can recognize hard truths, that is a major competitive advantage for you. So don't be afraid to look. It might be an emotional thing to look at and kind of come to terms, but it will give you renewed energy to move forward and make the corrections. And it's doable. There are a lot of levers that you have control over that you can pull to make things happen in your favor. So did you outpace your goals? Did you fall behind most months? And it's important to keep track of your business in an accounting system. Fullbay is a management financial system. It does a really good job of keeping track of your revenue and your cost of parts and so forth. And for some shops, maybe that's enough, right? And you want to keep track of it this way instead of just looking at the bank balance to see if you've got money in the bank, because that doesn't tell the whole story.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cash ins and outs that maybe you Maybe you got a big payment from a customer or a prepayment on a job, and or maybe you haven't sent your quarterly payroll tax payment in, and you think you have a bunch of money, but that's actually going to put you down to almost nothing. You just never know. So just looking at the balance in the bank is not sufficient to tell you how the business is doing. You need to keep track of your revenue and expenses.
Absolutely.
So,
and ideally, this is the time of year where you're doing just, the housekeeping, general housekeeping, where I guess one of the things, whether if you're doing, cleaning up the shop or reorganizing a new bay to be more efficient, at least try to count your inventory. Now, I'm a big fan of counting your inventory regularly. So on a monthly cadence using the ABC system. But if you've never counted your inventory, it's worth it to spend a couple of weekends, maybe hire a college student or a couple of high school folks and count and re-reconcile your inventory. There's nothing worse than trying to sell something that's not on the shelf because it's logically in the system but physically not there. Or you have things that are expiring. So seals, different things like that actually expire. Or we've even had folks with fifth wheels that they didn't know that they had that are no longer in use. You now have to find the unicorn customer still running a fifth wheel that's 15 or 20 years old. So definitely count your inventory, make time for it, and it might be surprising where you take a hit the first time you do the count. If you haven't counted in a long time, plan on taking a hit on the inventory asset line.
Yeah, you probably will. I mean, the reality is that inventory not tracked tends to walk away. And maybe it's not straight up theft. It's just somebody used a part on a repair and didn't write it down. Nobody knew that it was used.
Yep. And take the hit before you wrap up your taxes, right? Because you want to reduce that liability.
Yeah.
You don't want to pay taxes on it, overstating inventory. Even if it is a hit, it is what it is, but at least it saves you depending on how you're filing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think everybody knows that they need to be counting their inventory. It's not some mystery, but having the right tools to make it easy is important. So you mentioned like inside Fullbay, you have the ABC inventory, right?
Absolutely.
What is that?
I mean, I know. C.
I know what it is.
But it's this concept of, if you have expensive items or fast moving items, they're typically categorized as an A. And then you have this, what I call or refer to as a mid mover, a B. And then maybe they're slow movers or less valuable movers as a C. And ultimately what you want to do is put together a cadence, and whether it's monthly on the A's, quarterly on the B's, and semi-annual on the C's, you put together a cadence to do that. Now, over kind of arching all of that is negative quantity inventory. So no matter what a classification it is, A, B, or C, if you're running negative inventory, the first thing you do every morning is you open up the negatives and go to those bins and count them. Count it, reconcile, get them back to zero, or get them back to where they are, or where they're supposed to be. They're more than likely receiving errors, et cetera, but that is probably your number one priority when counting. Deal with the negatives daily.
Yep.
Then go after the ABC. Fullbay is kind of nice, not to go too hard on it, but we built this out to follow those fundamentals. We evaluate, we'll dynamically assign those. You can just say dynamically assign based on flow and movement, or you can manually assign them and override. So it's a clever tool if you're fine-tuning or counting your inventory.
Yeah, and every time you count a part in Fullbay, it records that it was counted.
And by whom?
And by whom, yeah. So you can see, and if there was an adjustment made and so forth. So it's super easy to do. You just have to get onto the cadence or assign somebody to do it.
And the days of going around with a tablet, writing everything down, and then spending hours keying it in, and when I say tablet, like a clipboard tablet, that's how the traditional way we used to see it. You can actually take an iPad or an Android tablet, like a technology device or your cell phone, and go count in the aisle. And when you're done counting, there is no reconciliation later. We're doing it automatically as you're processing the counts. So double work is a thing of the past.
So make sure the inventory is counted and up to date by the end of the year. Enter all your vendor bills. A lot of people don't think about this, but if you're using a formal accounting system, make sure to put all those in. So your Fleet Pride or O'Reilly, Napa, or whatever statement as of the end of December, make sure you have that inputted. All the vendor bills are in there. By the way, if you're using Fullbay, one of the really good practices is to never directly input a vendor bill for parts into your financial system. The only way it should get in there is from Fullbay dropping it in, because if you do that, it pretty much guarantees that the customer was billed for that part, or that it was tracked in inventory if there was an inventory part. So for what it's worth, when you look at the financial close checklist that we have available for download on the website, one of the items is to make sure all the vendor bills are inputted. So you want to do that. And one of the ways you do it is if you have an account with, say, Napa, they're going to send you a statement every month showing how much you owe, and then you pay on the statement. Well, most shops that are running with best practices will take that statement from Napa and make sure that every invoice that Napa is charging them for is actually theirs. And so a really good way to do that is to just, if you have Fullbay dropping these into your financial system automatically, all you got to do is take the statement and compare it to the financial system. And if there's an invoice missing, so if there's an invoice on the Napa statement that is not in your financial system, then you go and investigate that. And it might be that Napa charged you for somebody else's part. It happens all the time. Oh. And you can hold them accountable, have them remove that from your account so you're not buying somebody else's part. And so it's a really good check and balance. So when you do that every single month, you end up not paying for other people's parts, or you quickly discover who is buying parts from Napa and not putting it into the system. Therefore, the customer is not being charged for it, and you're on top of it on a monthly basis versus, waiting for much later to figure that out. So
yeah, and reconciling all of that, one of the other steps to do is actually evaluate how much money you spent, and are you paying for core charges that you simply need to return. So what was your performance by vendor? And as you're setting up your 2022, maybe you need to renegotiate the rate. Maybe your spend at Napa went up 20%. That potentially could, and it might be due to inflation, but it could actually be for, to get you a better deal.
Yeah.
So there's inflation that we all know about, but if you're actually buying more parts and the spend is from buying more, you may be entitled to a better deal, and it's definitely worth it. And then also with Fullbay, we're showing you on the vendor bills where you have core charges pending. So we're going to say, okay, we owe this vendor $10,000, but there's $1,000 in core charges pending or credits pending. The last thing you want to do is cut a check for $10,000. You cut it for $9,000 because you have pending credits. You want to return those and reconcile.
Healthy pressure on them to get you the credit that you're owed for the course.
Right. Yeah. So this is a good audit of all of that. Did you return everything, or did you take on some losses that you're not even aware of, specifically in cores?
And stuff like that, like a part that was used on a customer unit but not charged, or a core that you don't track down and get the credit for from the vendor. Stuff like that, when you think about it, it comes directly out of your profit, out of your bottom line. So if we're talking about $1,000 worth of cores, right? And you're running 10% profit margin net in your shop, you have to do $10,000 worth of work to make up for those $1,000 cores. So if you're not tracking that, or $100 worth of parts, you got to do a $1,000 job just to make up for that because of all of the effort that goes into doing a repair. If your net is 10% off the bottom, $100 is going to pop out as profit. You just gave that away by not being careful about tracking your parts, your inventory, your cores and stuff. So,
absolutely.
Anyway, I'll beat that drum forever.
Yeah. Well, it's important. These are serious dollars we're talking about, all wrapped up in inventory and vendor bills.
So that a part of the beauty of going through that checklist, the monthly close checklist, is it forces you to, it's like eating your vegetables. It forces you to figure out did I lose money on something I shouldn't have this month? Let's follow up on it. Another thing is make sure all customer invoices and payments are entered for the month. So to make sure your revenue is high enough and appropriate. So if you have some in-process jobs, some shops will actually, this is more advanced, go to the effort of booking a deferred revenue entry for in-process jobs. You may or may not be in a situation where you need to do that, where you have a lot of in-process stuff, but it's something to consider. Definitely make sure all customer invoices are in though and exported from Fullbay into your financial system.
Yeah, we've even seen folks split invoices. So let's say I have a $10,000 job,
like a progress billing.
And I'm closing out the 21. They might split the invoice and go collect revenue, so that because they know maybe there's a parts shortage or whatever it is, could take another month or two. You can take $10,000 job, split it, create a secondary invoice, and collect on it, and still have your WIP going.
Yep, for sure. And then finally, reconcile your bank accounts and your inventory. So I do this for our family, and we have way smarter and harder working people than me that do it for Fullbay, because it's easy to get behind. reconciling your bank account, it seems daunting, but with the tools that are available today, like different financial packages that are out there, it makes it way easy to reconcile your bank accounts. And until your bank accounts are reconciled, you don't know for sure, how much money you got from customers or how much money you're owed or you owe to vendors and so forth. So it's a nice, clean way to put a bow on top of the month, reconcile the bank account.
Absolutely.
One of the final pieces, and reconciling inventory. Right.
Yeah, and if you find, we were talking to somebody who was carrying almost $1 million in AR. Like if you're one of those folks, that's a larger account. That's not normal, but if you're carrying a substantial amount of money as you're closing out the books in AR, you might want to consider looking at IBS, Interstate Billing Services. That might be a better way for you because they give you your money immediately, and then they go carry that AR for you.
Yeah.
There's a small piece that they get for doing that. Maybe I don't know the exact number, but it's reasonable. If you're carrying that kind of cash and you're closing out a year and you're past 120 days, you're past 90 days, there is some value to getting your money. Every day you don't have your money, you're losing money, and you're losing value on the money. So it's almost, there's probably some portion of it that's a wash, and there's a portion of it that it's not as large of a charge than it appears on the surface.
Well, and you're basically operating as a bank. Like if you have $1 million in AR, you're operating as a small bank. You're like the Bailey Savings and Loan, right?
Exactly.
Like, do you really want it? It's hard enough to run a shop, but now you're having to, check credit worthiness of customers, chase them down, do collections, and do all this stuff, and it gets expensive. So yeah, that's a good option. Another good option is to, shift as much as you can to just immediate credit card payments or credit card payments on account. So
yep, ACH, credit card payments, absolutely.
So wrap up the year with confidence. As the CPA, the month-end close checklist is really important to me. But at the end of the day, accounting is something that we should all be able to at least converse in. It's the language of business. And what we're talking about with the month-end close checklist is just that language. And if you want to understand what's going on in your business, you need to be able to order food in the language, basically. So we're helping you out with the checklist, and it tells you exactly what to do. All right. Another thing that's important to do is a SWOT analysis. What the heck is a SWOT analysis?
Exactly.
So make sure.
Has anyone ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Some of you are probably like, that was back in business school.
Yeah. I mean, if you've gone to business school, you learn about this, but really we're going to teach you what you need to know about it. It's getting a good understanding of what is the reality of what's going on with your shop and then the market that you play in.
Yeah. And it's actually a simple concept. You can see the diagram over on the right. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Pretty straightforward, and really just starting to break down, what are you good at? Like, just think about it in different terms from a strength. What are you just really good at? You're great at PMs, or you're great at customer service.
So we're talking about the S.
Yeah, the S in strength.
You could do this on a whiteboard or maybe a blank piece of paper. Just go on there, divide it into 4 quadrants, put the S, the W, the O, the T, and you're going to start with the strengths. And you're just going to start making a list. What are your strengths of the shop?
Yeah.
And the S and the W relate to your shop, specifically your business. The O and the T relate to kind of the industry that you live in, your local market, the industry, so on and so forth. So the top is your shop. The bottom is more like your environment. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's absolutely, and there could be some opportunities within your 4 walls as well. But that's a great explanation.
So strengths, you're going to make a list. Like good at PMs.
Exactly.
We can find text like nobody else. We can steal text.
Exactly. Exactly. You have some contracts. You have some business locked up.
Yeah.
Your business isn't transient. Most of it's locked up in some sort of contract, right? So that might be a good thing, or that potentially could be a weakness or a threat if all of your business is 2 customers, right? So that could also kind of fall into a different bucket.
So once you list out all of your strengths in the S column, you do the weaknesses. Maybe you can't find technicians, which is the boat that most shops are in. Maybe you're not as good at being proactive with your customers' preventive maintenance as you would like to, right? You're only doing one and done repairs, and you don't like that. It's a weakness of your shop.
You're turning away business. You have contracts and you can't service the business. So that could be a weakness. It could also be an opportunity to hire a reefer tech or something like that to get that business.
And the reason that you do this is because you want to be real, get real about what is the reality that you're living in right now. before you start looking at setting goals for 2022. So, it kind of gives you a list to work from. Like, hey, I want to turn that weakness into a strength.
Right.
In 2022. Yeah.
Or that threat, maybe it's an opportunity. You're looking at ways that you can pivot and understand how to address the market, position yourself for 2022. It's a great exercise. Things can land in different buckets, the same thing. And I think just be careful not doing analysis paralysis, where you spend days and days and days on this thing. And also be careful that, so you might have, let's just say you have 10 things in each bucket. So now you got a list of 40 and you feel like you have to do 40 projects. Pick 3 of them, right? Stop at 3. If this is going to be a source of projects, maybe just pick 1. Maybe you pick 3 for the year, but try not to pick a bunch of projects off of this list.
Yeah, exactly.
And then overwhelm yourself. Yeah,
the research shows, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, but when you're going to set your goals for 2022, the research shows that if you set basically if you set 8 goals, you're not going to do any of them well.
Yeah.
But if you can whittle it down to no more than 2 or 3, you have a really good chance of doing all 2 or 3 with excellence this year. Once you start to set more than 3 goals, the quality of all of the goals, it's not like you do 3 really well and then the rest of the 8 are so-so. No, you don't do any of them well. So it's really important to keep the list short.
And if you find yourself struggling, there was a point where, this is dating myself back in the days when I was in private fleet. At one point, we had hundreds of goals as they cascaded through the industry. It was a several billion-dollar company, there's a lot of employees, but we had struggled with this concept. We had done the 3, and then every department had a 3, and it kept cascading and getting out of control. So we all just aligned, all right, it's going to be 3. We failed and didn't do all 3. We ended up just saying, well, we're just going to do 1.
Yeah.
It's very clear that we're too big to try to move.
Our operational execution isn't good enough yet to even do 3.
So we're just going to do 1. And it can happen to a small business or a large business, but if you feel even 3 is too much, just pick 1. And one thing's for certain, if you focus on 1 item, you'll do it. And maybe the item is an opportunity to go into mobile. You've been talking about it. Other people are doing it. It's a threat because someone near you just did it and started taking on business. If that's your opportunity, you're going to do it, well, then just do mobile. Don't go try to open another facility and do 5 other things at one time. It will be a recipe for disaster. Now you go land mobile and you do that by mid-year, or you do that in a quarter. Okay, well now done.
Set the next goal.
Let's go set the next goal.
It's land 1 plane at a time.
Exactly.
Land 1 plane at a time. Exactly.
And they're flying over us right now, just in case you hear one go by.
Our office is in the flight path of Phoenix Sky Harbor.
Yeah.
So we practice what we preach here, right? We do this every quarter. In fact, it's not just an annual thing for us. So every 90 days, we get together as the executive team and review. We do a SWOT analysis on it. And it's nice if you do this on a whiteboard, you don't want to just erase it and then not remember it. Write it down somewhere. So when you review it the next time, you're just updating it. You're not having to reinvent the wheel. That is really helpful for us. Plus, it helps see, wow, that used to be a weakness. It's not a weakness anymore.
Right.
It's a strength now. It's kind of cool to be able to see the progress in that way. So do a SWOT analysis in preparation for setting goals for 2022 to help you get real with what's actually going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're working in your company, these goals cascade down to maybe supervisors or even lead technicians. Those goals should not be independent of the company's goal. So if you set one goal to do mobile, don't allow someone below to set a goal that does not support mobile.
Everyone needs to know what the goal is in the organization. It shouldn't be this secret.
Yeah, maybe someone's goal is to buy the truck. Maybe someone's goal is to stock the truck.
Exactly.
Maybe there's different ways that you cascade that out, so one person isn't trying to do all the work, but stocking the truck, buying the truck, they all support a mobile truck, right? Or one person's in charge of hiring the technician. So there's a way to have these things kind of roll up to that one initiative.
Yep, exactly. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So now that you have reviewed 2021, you have reviewed your SWOT, you've done your SWOT analysis, you're in a really good position to start planning for 2022. So what do you want to make next year? What's going to be your number, your revenue, earnings, whatever your number is?
I just want to make a lot of money.
Right.
You heard that before, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, what is the number? Put it down.
I want to get a bunch of customers.
We're gonna give you a link to a financial plan that you can download and use here. Put put it down, like figure out what is that goal. And then back into how are you as an owner or the general manager or whatever your role is, how are you going to make this happen? Do you want to grow the business? By how much do you want to grow this thing?
You know, it's interesting too, like, because sometimes the financials get overwhelming for folks that aren't good with numbers, or they, you know, like if you said, hey, Chris, we want to grow the business by 20 million, or we want to grow the business by, in a shop, we want to grow by 20,000. That might be daunting for me as a service writer or a service manager. But if you translated that into, I've determined that, Chris, we need to add 5 customers per month. I can wrap my head around 5 customers. It's easy for me and the technicians to understand, and I can go put something together to make that happen.
Yeah.
So that as you're going through the financials and getting your ducks in a row, think about how to communicate that through your organization, because you can get to the money by a different mean.
Most people do something like a weekly toolbox meeting with the whole shop, right? And that's a good time to review, kind of provide accountability to you as the owner. Hey, you communicated these goals at the beginning of the year or the beginning of the quarter. How are we doing so far? And you want to be as transparent as you can be. There's some information that maybe is on a need to know basis. Maybe you're not sharing the earnings goal and so forth. But if you can translate that into something like you said, number of customers or whatever, and then keep them updated on how you're doing, like build a chart that's a goat climbing up the mountain or something.
we have
done. Yes, exactly. But it's important to have that kind of accountability. So not only so everybody knows what the goals are and how we're doing, but also it keeps the pressure on you to perform and not shrink when things get hard in May, from what goal you set out in January. So.
Yeah, and one of the things that we see with shops is warranty work, right? So you've gone through the year, and if you're tracking it, you've set up an item and you're tracking this revenue that's coming in, or actually the revenue that's being lost from the warranty or the comebacks. If you're tracking that and you see this number of 20,000 this year we lost, and it's Fred, sorry Fred, all the Freds out there, but if there's Fred that is the person that accounts for 15,000 of it, well, obviously we're going to do some coaching and working with them, et cetera. But if you're going to try to reduce that number, we actually have to put that goal out there, right?
Yeah.
We've got to turn that into some sort of actionable event and drill into, well, what's the reason that we're having this goal? Is it a filter problem? Is it actually a brand issue? Is it really the technician? And then are we asking them to do it in 30 minutes and they really need 40 minutes? Like, really evaluate how to achieve that thing and what levers you're going to pull to change the outcome of 22.
Makes sense. All right. So most shops operate on, and it actually works really well, on a week-to-week basis. Like, you have maybe a weekly goal of how many hours you want to invoice, right? So let's say a shop with 5 technicians is going to be paying each of those technicians 40 hours a week, right? So they know that they're paying 200 hours a week to technicians in cost. So that is the cost that's going out every week. So it's reasonable, and a lot of shops do this. They say, well, if I'm going to be paying for 200 hours, how many hours are we actually going to be able to bill? And unfortunately, a lot of shops run at less than 100% efficiency. So they may, of the 200 hours, maybe they're only billing 150 hours a week. Maybe that's the best they can do at this point, fine. But at least you know what it is. So on a week-to-week basis, hopefully you know what that is. And obviously in Fullbay, it's really easy to run this number and figure out what it is. So that might be a rule of thumb that you keep in mind and keep in your head and so forth. But what we wanted to do, we've shared this before, but there's a link here where you can download what we call, it's kind of a shorthand financial plan. We're going to get into the full-blown financial plan in a couple minutes, but this shorthand, it's like a financial model or a scenario analysis tool that you can use to start to input those numbers and figure out, well, based on what we know where we actually are, what could we do if we set one goal or maybe 2 goals for this year to move, a couple of the inputs on this. So what I'm showing here on my screen is this financial model that you can download. Very simple. It's really just one tab, scenario analysis tool. And what we show here is there's a weekly, monthly, and yearly kind of input, but all of these fields here that are not shaded are just formulas. The only ones that you really input are down here, where you can input your overhead expenses, And then over here, so they're shaded in gray, and then more inputs over here shaded in gray too. So like I mentioned, like say you have 5 techs, I'm going to change this from 4 to 5, right? And maybe you have a service manager and a parts manager or something like that. So maybe on an annual basis, 5 techs, you got some managers, they're making this much money. Let's say you're billing $85 an hour, which I know is low. 85, techs are costing 35, fully loaded. You want to put the fully loaded rate in there. At the end of the day, what we're looking at is you're only turning a $50,000 profit for the shop. And
you mind if we pause there?
No,
Does everyone know what fully loaded is? Like you glossed over that because you're an accountant,
right.
but like,
Yeah,
you
good
know,
point.
in shop world, what does that mean? Like
right.
loaded up on a truck with gas or?
All right, so I've got $35 here. Let's say, and I know if inflation, you know, is going crazy and everything, but let's just say you're paying your techs $30 an hour. You also have to consider the fact that you're paying in the US, the employer portion of FICA, and in Canada and other countries, there's similar employer taxes. So even though you might pay them $30 an hour, there's additional costs. There might be benefits, right?
So like medical benefits,
medical,
or
dental, 401k, whatever you might be
Social
offering.
Security, whatever you're paying.
Exactly. So fully loaded means when you take the total dollar amount that you're spending on the employee's compensation, whether it's straight up salary or hourly or whatever, plus the benefits, divide that into how many hours they typically work a week. It's probably 40. That's going to get you, it's the total weekly cost divided by 40. It's going to get you your fully loaded rate. So if your techs are making $30 an hour and they see you put in 35 in a model, they might be thinking they're getting a raise. They may not realize that's actually what they are making. Some of it's just coming through via benefits and
yeah. Sometimes I see people use 24% or
Yeah, I was trying to be conservative as always. So I would say 20-25%. So if they're making $30 an hour, so that times 1.25 is going to get $38 an hour would be your fully loaded rate, something like that. So that's how that works.
All right. Thanks for doing that. So get back on track.
No, that's good.
Not everybody, we've had that question come up, so I thought it would be a good one to recap.
That's good. Let me just go through these real quick in that case. So $85 is how much you're billing, and you can download this again. So the link is here. $85 an hour is what you're billing to your customers. I can change that, but I'm not going to yet. So 35 is your fully loaded cost of your technicians, right? How much are techs costing me? And that's going up. And by the way, if you have a hard time retaining technicians over wages, I think a decent rule of thumb is if you pay your techs $10 more an hour and you need to raise your labor rate that you charge your customers by double that. So pay your techs $10 more, you need to charge your customers $20 more an hour. General rule of thumb. So anyway.
At a minimum, the 10 has to pass through.
Yes, it has to. Unless you're running a charitable organization, diesel repair shop, and bless you if you are, but most of you are not running a .org. And so you need to charge what's fair, and it needs to be a fair exchange of value. Yeah, you're doing a hard thing, assembling a bunch of technicians and getting stuff done. It's hard. You need to be compensated for that. Anyway, so there's the 40 hours a week. We're paying the techs each. This is the 35. We're assuming that they're billing every week. So that gets you an 88% efficiency, which is just 35 divided by 40. That's all that is. And then there's some assumptions in here that you can tweak. Basically, you have to assume that, on the average ticket, how much of the ticket is parts versus labor. So we have an assumption here that 60% of the labor is what we charge for parts. And that might vary depending on your situation. We have to have that assumption in there to make the model work though. And then maybe your average parts markup we have in here is 30%. Then shop supplies array, we got 5%. We typically see 8%, but I've got 5% in the model. And then the cost of the supplies is baked in as well. Make sense?
Yeah.
And definitely. Then we've got our head count. And this is all just a really simple financial plan. The one that we're going to show in a few minutes has multiple tabs and really helps you plan out the year on a monthly basis. This is more just like a scenario analysis tool. So I've got 5 techs. We already know what their total comp would be because it's going to be 5 times the 40 times the 35 times 12. So their annual comp on average in this model is the 63, right? And then you got a service manager, parts manager, office manager, each with their salaries. Good?
Easy.
So you take all that, what this model does is it takes all that stuff and drops it into a simple profit and loss statement over here. And this column D is the monthly profit and loss. So with all these assumptions here, what we're showing is that this shop would be pulling in about $105,000 a month in revenue at a cost of that revenue, the cost of earning that revenue, $62,000. So that's the cost of labor for the techs, the cost of the parts, and the cost of the shop supplies, which we got from the assumptions. And then there's our profit margin. And then there's some overhead, the managers we know about, and then you're going to manually input what you pay on, rent, trucks and fuel, insurance, and so forth. So this is very similar to the full-blown financial model we'll see soon, but it's a nice tool to just show you, well, if that's monthly, weekly is just taking the monthly, dividing it by 4.3 weeks in a month on average. So now you can see, well, how much are we pulling in every week? Good?
Easy. And where can we get this again?
You can download it. The link is right on the screen, so you can download it from there. It's an Excel file. So what you can do for your shop is go in and say, well, this year, maybe my goal is, and it needs to be a SMART goal, right? And an easy way to think about SMART goals is they can be expressed as, we're going to go from X to Y by date.
Exactly. By when?
By when, exactly. So if I started the year with 5 technicians, maybe I want to go from 5 to 7 technicians by the end of the year. And that accounts for turnover. Maybe you're going to lose some techs, so you got to replace them. So if I want to go from 5 to 7, I can start running a scenario analysis saying, well, right now I'm making $50,000 a year running the shop. That's not great, but maybe I'm also the service manager. So if I add the 40, I'm at 90. Still not terrific for the hard job of owning and running a shop. But what happens if I go from, let's just go from 5 techs to 6? You can see what happened to the profit. It went up by 100,000, right? And even if I go back to 5, another thing I could set as a goal is to go up and say, well, we really should be billing more than 85 an hour. So I'm going to change this to 95. So I'm going to hit enter here and watch what happens down here to the 50. See, that also went up by 100,000. So if I increase my billing rate and increase my techs from 5 to 6, you can see how that's changing. And then to 7, so we're really in business now. I might need more managers now, right? To make up for it. What's interesting though is the biggest change here, billing 35 hours, paying for 40. One of the best things that you can do is to make the techs that you have right now more efficient.
Absolutely.
So if you were to make a goal to go from 35 to say, maybe we want to go from 88% efficiency to 100% efficiency, watch what happens here when I go to 40. See, that change alone, I didn't add any techs. I didn't increase the rate I charge my customers at all. And that had the biggest impact. It went up by 120. Now you combine it with an increase in the labor rate, getting to 7 technicians, and now it's looking really good. So you can run these scenarios on here to kind of get an idea of what you want your goal to be for the year. Absolutely.
It's a great tool. And we're just talking about labor. You can actually do this with parts. The next place to go is parts. Am I getting enough margin? You can go in and build matrices that pick up $1 or 50 cents or 10 cents or whatever it is at various levels. And you can pick up another lift in that area.
So you can see, the parts market rate, I've got a 30. If the average goes to 40, that adds some. That helps. Shop supplies really should be 8. So I'm going to change it to 8 from 5. That helps also. So look at there's some of these things that you can do that your customers will be totally fine with. Maybe you're just being a nice person. But remember, the way to stay in business long-term is for you to be in a win-win situation where there is a fair exchange of value between you and your customers. Don't feel bad about charging fair rates. And so if you're charging under, this can help you see what the impact would be.
Absolutely.
So once again, that's a free resource that you can download at this link, and it's a great tool.
Yeah.
Now that you've got kind of an idea of what kind of an impact you could make with changes, here's some more ideas about how you could grow the top line. So if you're looking to bring in more customers or have bigger ticket items coming in, here's some ideas. So like we talked about, maximizing shop efficiency is one way to grow revenue. You don't have to hire anybody new or anything. You're just running this thing better.
I think, it's going to be tough when you say hiring techs. We all know it's difficult to hire techs, but we got some friends over at American Diesel Training Centers. That might be a resource for you if you're really struggling in your market. Look up Aaron Picozzi. He's a great guy, great resource that can help you. So if you're heading down that road, it's definitely a tough road in this environment. They can help you out. Otherwise, the efficiency that Jacob talked about, it's by far the number one item. Outside of that, really evaluate parts. We see it time and time again where we go into a business and folks are living in the flat 20% markup. We see it everywhere.
Yeah. You
should have tiers cascading down. And if you touch a part for 50 cents or $1 bolt, you should probably be somewhere in the 200% to 400% markup or greater.
And it's fine.
Yeah, That's is fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And if anyone's been down to the local Ace Hardware, you can almost buy a box of bolts for a few metric bolts there. They're doing it. Everybody's doing it. And it's not that it's price gouging. It just costs so much to manage that. For you to go get one or two or a handful of bolts, the delivery, your technician,
what did it
storing,
take for that bolt to get onto the truck?
Right.
You need to be fairly compensated.
There's
for
a
that.
burden cost to that, and you're entitled to it. And then sales. It says sales team. There's so many shops out there that don't see the need for a salesperson. We just open our doors and people come to us. And that's true. There are some markets that it's just flooding in based on your location, the demographics, whatever it is for your industry. But a sales team can really be a game changer. Somebody actively going out with a plan to sell private fleets, to lock in contracts, to get business, get opportunities, or even just focusing on the cycle of advertising for your company, doing basic marketing, which we'll get into here in a few minutes. But don't underestimate sales. And even if your salesperson is your service writer, they should be thinking about more than just folks walking in the door. They should be thinking about all the estimates they wrote 2 weeks ago, a month ago. Somebody's going to get the business unless they bring them in. Or you found a bunch of things that were wrong with the vehicle, and you can call those folks back and say, hey, those tires we marked as getting low. We're calling you to see if you want to bring that in and get them done. It's been about 3 weeks or it's been a month. You can take that service writer and all the activities that they're seeing on a daily basis and turn that into a sales event where they're just reaching out and doing outbound using pending repairs and using estimates as a way to do outbound outreach.
So if I'm a shop that's not doing that, that's not proactively going out into the market to do sales work, that could be a goal that I set.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't even need to hire somebody. This is just a goal that the service writers are going to make.
Exactly. Yeah. And it could even be just PMs. Like almost every shop we see is behind on PMs. And in some cases, they have a day that's slow. If you're behind on PMs and you have a day where technicians are standing around, that in itself doesn't make sense. It's almost like an oxymoron, right? The two don't match each other. They're just opposite. So
there's work to be done.
There's work to be done. You're not just proactively. You got to get into a proactive mode where, if you're using Fullbay, you've got, again, estimates, pending repairs, and you also have a tab called PMs. What are the PMs that are due? If Fridays are slow at 2:00, fill it up.
Yeah.
Just because it's Friday doesn't mean go home early. Load it up with some PMs to close out the day. Run all the way to 5 if that's your shutoff time.
And PMs can be the absolute most efficient stuff that you do, because you can have all the parts ready to go. The tech just goes and knocks it out, and could potentially knock out multiple units simultaneously. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So lots of ideas for how to grow your shop, and what we're going to do more and more in the future, and you've seen this with Fullbay websites, is helping you with the inbound efforts. So maybe you don't have to, you can combine having a salesperson or the service writer go out into the market to bring in business. Think about ramping up your marketing efforts. So marketing today is very different than it was even 15, 20 years ago. It's a night and day. And we talk a lot about this transition from marketing has kind of gone from the Mad Men to the Moneyball, right? So it used to be that the saying that half my marketing budget is wasted. I just don't know which half. And today you can know exactly where a lot of your marketing dollars are going and whether they're wasted. And then if you see that they're wasted, you shut that tactic off and move to something else. So some things that you could do to bring in business organically is, if you don't have a great website, get a modern website that's optimized for SEO. If you don't have a website at all, get something so people can find you. You'd be surprised at what a difference that makes. So we offer that.
Yeah, what's interesting too is we have some folks that say, I have more than enough business. Why would I want a website? Why should I even invest? And it's short-sighted. Things change. We've seen a lot change over the last couple of years. I would highly recommend not being short-sighted. Have a professional image of your company online via a website. Have a mechanism for folks to submit service requests or at least track traffic. So when you are slow, or if that time comes, to make that pivot, if you're not prepared, it's going to be much harder, and you're going to be in some deep water versus just having it ready and running and maintaining it. And if you have more business than you can handle, the question is, should you grow? Should we be doing something different? Or get a partner, right? Get another partner shop, acquire a shop.
Chances are you've probably been reached out to by Google or Facebook or Yelp or whatever about advertising on their platforms. And a lot of you do spend significant money advertising on Google and Facebook. And so what we wanted to show you here is another free resource we wanted to give you. And what it is a cost per customer calculator, basically to help you show whatever channels you're spending money on, which of those channels are actually providing you a return, are actually providing you customers. And one of the nice things about using the Fullbay repair request on your website is it captures a lot of data and records it onto the customer record about where the customer came from, if you set it up right. So and our marketing websites team can help you set that up. So what I wanted to show you here is this calculator. It's a spreadsheet. You can download it at this link. Now you can see this on my screen. What I'm showing here is on the left side, you've got your marketing costs. So if I zoom in here, I can see that maybe for Google in January, I spent $1,000. February, I spent $1,100. So what you do in these blue input fields is you just put in what the name of the tactic is and how much you spent. And then down here, the name of the tactic just pulls from above, so you don't have to type it again. So I've got my website, Google, Facebook, maybe I'm advertising in a breakdown directory. How much do I spend every month here? And then down here, I input once I get a customer from one of those marketing tactics. And like I said, using the repair request form on the Fullbay website will help you identify where the new customers came from. You just put that number in and it'll spit out for the amount of money that you spent, how much did you spend per customer acquired, if that makes sense. So you can see in this example, your website is pretty cheap for finding customers. You just put yourself out there and the search engine crawlers will start to pick you up. And when people search, your website's gonna pop up in a lot of cases. So it's a relatively small cost to get a lot of customers, especially in this example. There might be some cases where, like Facebook here, the way the tool works, I spent $750 in February and I got 0 customers. So it's in red because it's saying you got nothing. So you spent $750 and you got nothing. So it's a nice little calculator. It helps you think through this marketing spend. So you're not just burning it and not even knowing what you're getting back from it. And this is something that we are continuing to work on and improve on our own website's offering. And we plan to have a report like this inside Fullbay in the future, tied to the websites to make it even easier.
Yeah, if you're interested in a website, I think we'll have some more information at the end of this, but it's a great resource to drive business, or at least give a professional appearance on for your business.
Yep.
The last thing you want, if I'm looking for your shop, maybe I've been referred to your shop, trying to find your shop, trying to find information on your shop, and it's very hard, or it's just an ad from Manta or something like that. Yeah,
exactly. Don't be hard to find. That's the last thing you want to be. So that is the cost per customer calculator. Nice, simple tool, but it actually really helps think through the marketing tactics.
That was pretty easy.
All right. Now, with those ideas, the results from 2021, your SWOT analysis completed, how do you create a financial plan for your shop that shows month by month how you're going to do this year? Here we go.
There's the Chris rubbing his hands. Robbie can hear it now.
And I got to say that what we're teaching you and what you're showing you here is exactly how we do it, and how we have grown Fullbay from basically nothing to what we are today, which has become very significant. And it may not sound sexy, and it may sound overly simplistic. Maybe it sounds complicated. It's not that hard, but it's something that you definitely want to do every year. Make a plan, and it's like the Hawthorne effect. Like when you measure something, performance tends to improve just by virtue of measuring it. So you can download the template that I'm going to show you here. Go to fullbay.com/sample financial plan. The link is there on the screen. You can download this. It's free. Use it for whatever you want. And this is our collective wisdom. We're giving it to you as our gift. We want you to be successful. Now, what you see on my screen is an Excel spreadsheet. And down below, you've got some tabs. So there's instructions on how to use this thing is the first tab. And then your profit and loss statement, just like you would see in a financial system, a balance sheet, cash flow, and then a people tab where you can put in your assumptions around your headcount. So it's similar to the model that we were just looking at, but it's more expanded so you can use it for a full plan. And this is legit. Yeah. Like this is legitimately the kind of thing that you would use to plan like a multi-million dollar, $100 million into the billions type company. Like this is how you do it. And one thing I've learned in many years of doing financial modeling for very successful businesses is that you don't want to, like you said, Chris, analysis paralysis. You don't want to overthink it, because at the end of the day, you could load just a ton of assumptions in here and different bells and whistles and stuff. But at the end of the day, you're probably going to come up with the same result as you would on a really simple, straightforward plan like this. So why waste the effort? You're going to get there. And we see crazy precision between our plan and our actual, where, it's just amazing. It's where we're basically like keying in with like principles of nature here. So you can keep it simple and you're going to be okay. And it's going to end up being more precise than you think.
Yeah, and it gets better over time. I think one of your first run at this, you might be off, and that's where you're learning. That's why you got to keep going through the process, and then pretty soon you're kind of pulling a Babe Ruth. You're like, I know exactly where that's going to be, and the run rate is this, and then you're deciding, do I want more than that, or is it realistic in the environment or a certain season?
Persistence, not perfection.
Exactly.
That's what you want. It's one of our family core values. Okay, so. I'm going to run you through this. The way this one works, and we should probably be a little more consistent in how we do the assumptions, but in this one, the assumptions that where you actually put a value in, and it's not just some formula popping out a number. In this case, it's blue. So it's a blue number. So in the past, we had a gray shaded cell, we had a blue shaded cell. Here it's blue. So
we're trying to change it up. Got to keep you on your toes.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like a survey, right? That was, put in the survey.
We can't do it perfect. That would just be intimidating.
So but it is solid. This is legit, and it is solid. It looks daunting. I will say that when you first look at it, it looks daunting, but Jacob will make this look easy in just a second.
So here we go. You want to go down to line 37 and fill in the assumptions in blue first. And it's very similar to what we just looked at in the financial model. So you're going to put in like every month of the year, how many technicians do you have? So in the last one, we were just saying there was only one opportunity to input the text. Well, maybe you want to go from 5 to 7. And you realize that it's going to take by April to get to 6, right? So you can fill this out like this, and maybe by August you're at 7, or maybe by the end of the year you're at 7, something like that. So you can, I'm trying to zoom out here. It gives you an opportunity to have your assumption month by month, which is more realistic.
And if you really wanted to fine tune it, sometimes if your budget's really tight and the numbers are off and you're out of line on your budget, if you're going to hire somebody mid-month, I've seen folks use 6.5 or 5.5, hitting the effective rate of the employee.
Yeah,
it isn't you have a half a body. We're really talking about 4 weeks or 4.3 weeks in a month. So you can do stuff like that with headcount if you ever have seen that, or you need to do that.
Yep. Exactly. So feel free to do what you need to here. And you'll notice when I change the technicians, for example, this one right here in April, I changed to 6. If I change it to 5, watch what happens to my net profit number, because the P&L is just above. It's out of view, but watch the net profit number. See, when I went from 5 to 6, you see the impact that the one technician has. And if I scroll up, you can see that this here in April is a full profit and loss statement, similar to what we saw in the model and similar to what you'll see in your accounting system, where I have a revenue section here, labor, parts, sublet, shop supplies, revenue, just the revenue. Then I have a cost of revenue section, cost of labor, cost of parts, cost of sublet, cost of shop supplies. And when we help shops get set up with Fullbay, we always recommend that you think of your profit and loss statement in this way. It should never be just one line to lump in all the costs. And a lot of shops won't even put the cost of paying their technicians up there. They just shove it down with the cost of paying the office manager and stuff. But it's important to do it this way, because then you can match the labor revenue, for example, to down here, the cost of labor, and then precisely calculate your labor profit. How much are we actually making on labor? How much are we actually making on parts? Whereas if you lump it all together, you can't get this kind of precision. And it's not that hard to do. In fact, when you set it up in Fullbay, we'll feed it over to your accounting system exactly like this, and it's awesome. So.
Yeah, there's a full chart of accounts right inside of Fullbay, and we basically map it to the chart of accounts in a system like QuickBooks, or we'll publish it to the API. So
you want to model it the same way too. And like I said, because these are not shaded blue, you don't even have to worry about doing anything. It's all just flowing up from the assumptions down there. We already took care of it for you. So there's nothing to do. Literally, all you have to do here is put in down here in your operating expenses, the blue ones, what do you have for overhead? So name it, and then put in a monthly amount. We've got some placeholders here, but you would want to change this to what you actually have. And then go down here and change your assumptions on how many technicians you have, how many hours per week are they going to bill? So here we've got them at 40, but maybe you're only at 35 right now, right? So you switch that to 35. You can see we're starting the year in a loss position. What's the hourly rate that you bill your customers? Maybe you want to increase it. And in this case, because you're not really changing your labor rate that much, you only have to put it in once, and you'll notice that the other 95s here are all black. So if I change this first 95 to like 105, and then as soon as I hit enter, all these other 95s are going to change because they're just flowing from that one. It's not really a common one that you change all the time. Once I did that, we're back in the black, by the way. So, and then like we saw in the other model, the markup rate for parts, an assumption about the cost of parts as a percentage of labor. You can keep that the same or adjust it if you have a better number. And then how much you're marking up your sublet, and what's your shop supply rate. Same concept. That's it. So once you input these numbers, it's going to spit out a P&L that's probably really accurate to what your actual P&L is. It's I've done this with shops many times, and I think for them it's almost creepy because they think their P&L is private, and it is private, but I can pretty much figure out what it is just by getting a few numbers from them about the shop. How many techs do you have? What do you charge for labor? How efficient are the techs? I can tell them what their P&L is. Yeah. So you can now do this too with this model.
Yeah, and just to note while we're doing this, Jacob referenced Sublet. If you're not marking up Sublet, those typically aren't pass-throughs. You should, at minimum, put 20% on it, or put brackets on it where as it increases.
We see that too. Don't we?
As a value increase, we see it all the time. You're spending all this time to track down a subcontractor,
manage the repair,
invoice, take on the debt. You pay them immediately. There's a cost of doing business. So now, granted, you can't get 20 or 30% on every transaction, but you put together a matrix that manages it. And we have a tool in Fullbay, but never underestimate the areas that you can make margin.
Now, when you look at these other tabs here, balance sheet, cash flow, you may not want to use these just depending on how deep you want to go, but they work. So the three financial statements work in tandem. I used to teach accounting in college. So they flow. So you can see, if you really want to, you can actually predict based on what your beginning cash balance is. You can predict how much cash you'll have in October if you really want to. And then the cash flow statement, in principle, all it does is reconcile the P&L to a cash basis approach, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, they're there. Yeah. My gift to you.
Disclaimer, seeing the cash on the cash balance sheet doesn't mean go buy a Harley or a new boat. You should pay yourself a salary that allows you to get the things that you need in life, whether that's a boat for your family, the house you need to pay. That should be baked in your salary. The cash on this isn't for purchasing things for personal use. Even if you are the owner, I know that that might be a shocker, and some of you might be, well, of course we don't use this money. This is to run the business, and this is the money you want to keep in the bank for the following year, right? And there might be some equipment investment and different things like that you want to do that are strategic, but definitely it's not the money to use for the toys.
Well, I will say that an interesting thing you can do here is go in and say how much you spent on fixed assets in a given month. Well, negative 250. You can actually put it into the model and it will show you when you will then run out of cash because you bought that boat. So anyway, it's there.
Just be careful. We see it a lot. We know someone who had at one point 4 Harleys and 2 boats, and we weren't even sure, and I'm not even sure he knew what he was doing with all of those, other than it was fun.
So the last tab here, the people tab, really, once again, the blue is the inputs, and it's similar to the financial model that we showed, the one pager. You put in the title of the people that work for you, how much they make annually. And then throughout the year here, you put in how many people you're going to have in each position, right? Technicians is flowing from the first tab because that's one of our key assumptions. So you don't have to put that one in. It'll just come in. But the other ones that are shaded blue, you put them in, and then their cost is going to flow over to the P&L. So if you know that, if I go from 5 to 7 techs, I need another service manager, you can up the service manager here from 1 to 2 in, July, and then just put the 2 over all the way. And there it is. We've also done some things where some shops, we included it here. Some shops will do a kind of like an efficiency bonus for the entire shop. So not just for the technicians, but maybe you want your general manager or your parts manager to have an efficiency bonus based on invoiced hours. So maybe you're paying them 50 cents on top of their base compensation, a bonus of like 50 cents per invoiced hour. And it's a small thing, but it's interesting how that helps fully align everybody in the shop around invoiced hours. So if you're trying to increase efficiency, maybe go from 35 to 40 a week on average per tech, doing a small bonus like that is actually pretty effective. It just kind of reorients people to really focus on the invoiced hours number. So, and everything else flows. Here's your 20%, which we have in here. Chris recommended 24. We can put that in. That's your fully loaded. So up here, you don't have to put in your fully loaded, just put in what their straight up salary is. Yeah. And then down here, you have your fully loaded assumption. So it's basically going to take whatever their salary or hourly rate is and load another 20% cost on top of it before it flows back to the P&L. So that is the model. And like we said, when you're setting your goals for the year, keep it simple.
Yeah.
1 to 3 goals, and land one plan at a time. So that's the financial plan. And we are not holding back. That is a legitimate financial plan. You can kind of use in any business by tweaking the assumptions. So for a diesel repair shop, we have it custom built. Run with it. Good luck. And we wanted to plug the next webinar. It's next month, February 15th, how to hire sales and marketing for your shop, like Chris mentioned. Learn the keys to helping your maintenance operation thrive this year with the power of sales and marketing. About Fullbay, which we've mentioned a bunch. Heavy-duty repair shop software built specifically for commercial repair for shops fixing fleets. And if you would like to see a demo of Fullbay, just respond to the polling question on your screen now, and we will get somebody in touch with you. We would love to show you what we've built, and we're always here to help. So that is our webinar today. Any questions that we didn't already address, we will get to you shortly after the webinar. And we thank you for your time and look forward to seeing you again. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob.
See you later.
Amazing job.